But when I say we've come to the limits of the planet, I actually think about climate crisis. So we are heading right into a climate crisis in about a decade or so, which will evoke an unstoppable chain of events that could be catastrophic to mankind. And to avoid this, we need to mitigate emissions dramatically. And food is right up there, right after energy, I think, in the technology transformation needed to make this happen without adversely affecting our way of life.
This podcast is powered by imops.io. Optimize your cloud infrastructure and CI/CD process with imops.io dedicated DevOps team. Check out www.imops.io and get a DevOps team now. Welcome to our series entitled The IM Podcast, a podcast about innovation, business, and most importantly, people. In this series, we'll be talking to founders, executives, and various experts about their vision, challenges, best practices, and lessons learned throughout their journey. Let's get started. What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the I Am Podcast. I am Raya, your host, and today with me is the co-founder and the CEO at Mermade Seafoods, Danielle Einhorn. Hello, Danielle.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Well, it's been raining. How about in Israel?
Blistering hot.
Blistering hot. How's everyone at Mermade Seafoods?
We're doing great, really great. Everything is better than planned, so that's always a good place to be as a startup.
Really busy. I saw on your LinkedIn like you're really hiring, scientists and researchers. So before we go deep dive into the product, so tell us a bit more about you, your personal, your career, and your expertise.
Sure. All right. Daniel Einhorn, I'm 32. I have a master's in business administration. I did both my degrees in Israel, where the company is located. Early on in my career, I was a naval officer here in Israel for about 7 years. I have thousands of hours at sea. This is really where I draw my inspiration and motivation for the company. I just love the sea, so that was just the starting point. I actually don't miss the missile ships so much. I do miss sailing, and so I sail all the time, sailboats, leisure, the Mediterranean mostly. Really like it. I also scuba dive a bit, and I swim. And if I swim only at sea. I don't swim at pools. So yeah, I really just whenever I'm in there, I'm in the water. I feel that it's definitely the cradle of life. There's something so lively about that scent and feel, even though it's salty. I don't know. Somehow I feel that it's very important. And we're seeing what's happening to our seas. So that's what gives me the motivation to keep on going. And after that, I established and was co-founder of a venture studio in Israel called Tech7. So I co-founded it, and I was the CEO over there for a few years. The organization did very well, and 1 year ago I decided to move on, appoint a new CEO to the organization. I now sit on the board, and I use all of my time to be the CEO of Mermade Seafoods.
Interesting. We had Yotam Zucker here. Tech7,
Yeah,
right?
I think I saw yeah, that's right. So yeah, it's, you know what, I'll actually touch on that. Obviously, we're very good friends. He's chairman of the board. We started out, I kind of joined him very early on at the mission in Tech7. I think that's what's really special about Tech7 is that all of the founding team and all of the staff over the years that were working there, all have become either entrepreneurs. Usually, the founders of Tech7 became entrepreneurs, and the staff is somewhere in the high-tech scene in Israel now, about 100 alumni working all over Israel. So it's just amazing taking part in that. So yeah, Yotam is an amazing guy, super inspirational, my mentor for a few years there when I kind of taught me a lot. And now we're on our different ways, each a startup.
Yes.
Yes, both CEOs of startups. Hello, Iatam, if you're listening. Okay, so yes, you love the sea, you love sailing. The sea is salty, it's the cradle of life. So, what happened? Take us to the first conversation. Who did you approach? How did the idea come about?
Sure. Well, first of all, I was lucky enough to be the last co-founder to join the company. So the other co-founders formed the idea and kind of found me.
Oh,
I guess I was in the right time, right place. I do have to say for myself that I immediately recognized how important this idea was, and then the only question left was the dynamics and chemistry between me and my co-founders, which was and still is great. So it was a no-brainer for me to just stop whatever I'm doing and start building this company. For me, it was an easy choice, but I do want to say for listeners, just expectations for everyone starting out and stuff like that. We were unemployed for about 9 months before raising our first dollar, working full time on the company. So I'm saying, it came with a price, but I was never afraid. I knew that it's going to succeed, and it will just take time. And I'm very happy with that.
okay. You were unemployed for 9 months, so that's you're bootstrapping. So how's every day back then? Yeah, how's it like?
For me, a normal day in business, because in spirit, I was always like this. I really like building stuff. It always comes with amazing dedication and some kind of price, either personal life, obviously time, a lot of insecurity where you don't know what's going to be here next day. So for me, I love it. But that was what it's like. I mean, we were working from home. It was COVID time.
Yeah.
We didn't pay for an office. We were just working from home, building whatever foundations the company needed, plans, fundraising, what it's gonna be like, and it actually turned out good. That once we got our funding, we were really right on track, very very fast. I'm not sure. In terms of like other startups, I'm not sure how many startups could have get onto this kind of deep R&D so fast, almost immediately.
Amazing. Okay, so yes, please talk to us about the pain point. How big is the pain point in the recent years, right? Like companies are developing this plant-based things. So how big is that pain point?
All right, sure, of course. Well, first of all, just make sure we're not a plant-based company, we're a cell-based company, just make sure. So, but generally speaking, there's a few different perspectives I like to explain this problem. And the most basic one, and the most actually, I think it's like from the highest altitude describing this, is that whenever you have an organism living in some system, right, in some ecosystem, and they're thriving, then you use the resources available until you get to a certain point where you can't no more, and then usually that population declines or even worse. And what's special about human beings in general is that we've managed to find a loophole in this condition where we can make more out of the same resources using technology, which is something unique to humans. I mean, we've done this over and over again. The most important two, I guess, were the agricultural revolution and the industrial revolution. But basically, ever since 10,000 years ago, from the agricultural revolution, we've been growing food and protein, and definitely animal protein, in roughly the same way. And that worked out well to about the size that we are right now, 8 billion people, going to about 10 billion people by 2050. But we are humans, we are clever, and we've managed to really get to that threshold where the planet itself is that ecosystem I was describing, and there's just no more with the same technology. So I see cell-based as, again, this agricultural revolution where we'll be able to use the same resources but create maybe tenfold or even hundredfold more food out of the same resources, and that's a necessity. But I do want to highlight just two main points about this. I was describing it in a very food security context, so that is definitely a problem, and we want to make more food out of the same resources. But when I say we've come to the limits of the planet, I actually think about climate crisis. So we are heading right into a climate crisis in about a decade or so, which will evoke an unstoppable chain of events that could be catastrophic to mankind. And to avoid this, we need to mitigate emissions dramatically. And food is right up there, right after energy, I think, in the technology transformation needed to make this happen without adversely affecting our way of life.
Yes, it's very interesting. You are a pioneering food tech startup company, right, in the field of cell-based foods.
We like to think so, yeah.
Well, what are your challenges here?
Challenges.
Biggest challenges?
Challenges are, I mean, challenges are just, they're tremendous, but we are capable for them as humanity and ourselves, of course, the company, but they are very challenging. The main ones are, first of all, I'd say you have two processes or two major pillars in building cell-based meats. So the one is more of biological in nature. It is getting the biomass, which is fairly underhand by the industry by now, just being able to reproduce the cells needed. Now the problem became at what cost and at what scale. That's this generation of R&D's at where it's at. So that's the biological challenge of just getting enough material out of less, basically getting more out of less. That's one thing. But once you do that, you still remain with a commercial, more consumer-oriented problem, which is, at this point, this food is nutritional, but you can't really call it food. It's just a biomass. So it's a material with no real shape, no real texture. So the second pillar I was referring to in the beginning is food engineering. Now you need to take that raw material and make it in shape and texture and the way it behaves in cooking and in eating, that it would be either the same or better or just like a good experience out of this food product. And those are two completely separated, very big challenges. You could theoretically work on these in a completely separate companies. And they're big, both of them.
Yes, I just remember my interview with Kanan Schneider, like an investor. Millennium Food Tech, right? He said, okay, the challenge now, okay, I know plant-based meat, everything fish, eggs, they're alternative, but how much is the cost? If you say, okay, this costs like little less, then I would talk to you. So that's a competition now. So yes, talk to us about the competition.
We're the only company in the world that have a circular method of production. We retain the waste in the process of making the cell-based material. We retain the waste and we reuse it completely without losing any water and any basically useful ingredients. And the way we do that is by algae. So there are some companies in the world using algae to create media ingredients. Media is the substrate needed for the growth of the cells, the food, if you'd like, for the cells. So that's very expensive, and that's where the cost is coming from, the cost problem. So if you can recycle or upcycle that media, you can save a lot of money. When I say a lot, I'm talking about 1,000-fold or more. So that's what our company is doing. But I was trying to separate us from other, for example, algae companies. So algae companies that have an expertise in creating algae for the use of media, you still need a source for growing that algae. What's special about us, and I think I still haven't heard any other company that does this, is that our source for culturing that algae is from the cell culture. So just to put it a little bit more orderly and simple, we go the cell culture. We take that cell culture waste. So any cell-based company have this, and that cell waste we move on to a algae culture, which we further grow, and then we use that algae culture back again as useful medium ingredients. This is the circular method that I was talking about. We call this cytoponics because it's similar to aquaponics from traditional aquaculture. So cellular aquaponics becomes cytoponics, and that's unique to us.
Okay, so that's your killer feature, the circular method of production.
Yes,
Okay.
killer feature. I'm gonna use that one. That's our killer feature. Yeah.
I just remember Uri Tukani. So from Product League. So he said, okay, every startup should have a killer feature. So for yours, it's the circular method of production. Okay,
Exactly.
It really sounds truly sustainable and like scalable. So where are you now in your journey?
We are, well, first of all, we have a few firsts in the world. We're very novel. So we're the first company in the world to really I think we're close or working on getting a cell line out of marine mollusks. Specifically, we're working with scallops, as I've said, but that's something that hasn't been done before. So that's something we're working on and is very thrilling. Just working with these cultures of scallops. So we're culturing cells of scallops right now, and we're also culturing a few different strains of microalgae. All of them are in commercial use nowadays. So we know that if we find that right synergy between the scallop cells and the algae that we're working on, then we have a really great solution, and it would surely be scalable because we've chosen just species that can scale, that have been shown to scale.
Okay, I am curious. So, honestly, how did it taste? I mean, I saw on your website the cultivated scallops, which really look so yummy, right? So, how does it taste?
Yeah, well, no, it's a fair and good question. I'm sorry to disappoint, but that video is just like generally available. It's not our own scallops. Yeah, we're not yet there. We've just started working in the lab in March. So again, I said that we've managed to make R&D really fast. If you think of it, we're talking about something like five months. And we are working with these cultures, but it will take a few more months until we get to a scallop prototype, and we need enough biomass to work with. So we're working with our cultures to make enough biomass right now, and only at that point we would be able to harvest some of that mass and create that first prototype for tastings.
That's really exciting. Like I can see.
Tell me about it. Every day I wake up and I'm like, I'm just dying to go to work and see what's going on under the microscope.
Yes. Oh, Rutem should be very busy. I cannot imagine how's life would. I mean, in the lab every day. Okay. So yeah, I saw like you're hiring people. I mean, it's really scaling. And why is it a great place to work? Okay, as a CEO, why is Mermade Seafood a great place to work?
Well, it's a cliche, but obviously, first of all, the people. I think we're just as a founding team. Obviously, any founding team want to get along real great, but I think that we really have this composition of a founding team, which is, for lack of a better word, very friendly, very like human resources oriented. That's something that's very important to us. We've been talking about it a lot before we had our first hires, about like the culture of the company and how we want to treat each other and how we want to treat our employees. And we want everyone who comes to work to feel, the way I feel, which is enthusiastic about I really wanted to build a company, and I think that's true to the other founders as well, to have that feeling. So it's easier when you're fulfilling yourself through building the company and making all the decisions. We want to bring that feeling to employees as well. We are doing something very special to the world. So why shouldn't everyone working in our company feel that same way? And you know why? Just like the management of HR, that's why. So, I don't have all the answers, but I do know that it's not an objective thing whether they feel like that or not. It's a subjective experience that we need to work on through making sure our employees know what we're doing and why. Being able to comment and influence that decision process. Liking the people they work with. Being able to mention if they don't like something. That's everything about the environment. And I think it's something in the core DNA of the founders to be thinking about these subjects.
The vision. So everyone must be very excited to see that cultivated scallops every day at the lab under the microscope.
Yeah.
Are you
Exactly.
all vegans or meat lovers? What's the composition of your team?
Yeah, Tomer, the COO, is vegan. Me and Rotem are flexitarians. And yeah, the rest of the team are also kind of, I guess, try to consume less and go for the more sustainable options.
Okay, so you're 32 and you have 2 more co-founders, right? Okay, so talk to us about the founding team. Like, how do you
Okay.
get along? What are your strengths? How do you
Right.
complement each other?
Oh, okay, great. Well, first of all, I have no background in biology. So I'm very, I'll start with
Really?
myself just because it's easier. Yeah, I don't. I did learn some marine biology in my bachelor's, but that's not what those studies were. It wasn't like a main topic. It's just something that, I took with my general studies. So I guess I learned everything I know about this thing. I really learned because of being a naval officer more than an academic. So my academic background is almost exclusively to business administration, with a few hints here and there for seafaring studies, and also obviously my experience just in the sea. But yeah, I also am very, very curious. So I did kind of learn a lot much before that job, or regardless of the job. I used to really love physics and biology, so I kind of have enough to get the basic sense. But yeah, I guess I bring a lot of clarity to the business here, because then you just whatever I don't really understand, where it's getting to drilling down to that very hardcore R&D stuff, I don't hear that clutter. And I just hear like, okay, what's the volume? What's the price? When are we going to do this? What are going to be the risks? And for me, I think, business is really a process that you apply on whatever subject you're doing. It's the commercialization of knowledge or something like that. So for me, I think that works really great with my founders. And I think we also really enjoy translating things to each other. Like, they might say something very complex in biology, so I'd ask for, I don't know, like an analogy from something simpler, and it's the same for them. So let's say I think about a proposition from an investor and I try to explain them what's going to happen. So I need to put it in simpler terms. So if we're talking about like anti-dilution with investors, I don't know, whatever, then,
What is that?
I need to, yeah, exactly. So I might even put it in some biological sense or something.
I can imagine.
And
Like,
that actually brings clarity. No, but just to finish up, that really brings clarity to the decision makers or the board, because there's always a simpler perspective to the same issue.
Again, I can remember the conversation with Kanan Schneider again. Like, okay, you don't really have to speak English, you just have to communicate clearly, right?
Yeah,
And maybe
Focus and
to
clarity,
affect
I mean,
growth.
that's just, it's so important. Management, I sometimes think it's almost exclusively focus and clarity. Because it's really sorry, yeah, am I is this too much?
No, no, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
Right. I'm saying that it's very, very clear if you look at it from the side. Again, if when I'm in the room and we're talking about decision making in R&D, then focus and clarity is all there is, because otherwise I wouldn't be able to understand and influence the decision process. And I assume that when you have a little bit worse communication in some certain company, then R&D just does whatever they do, because there's no one, giving some holding it accountable just because you can't understand what's going on. So focus and clarity actually helps also R&D very much, just to like explain it to a layman. That helps R&D make sure they know what they're doing. That makes basic sense.
Yes, yes. Yeah, I got that. And I I think you three really make a good team. Like the seriousness of the team, like okay, this is the product, lab, microscope, and you're the business side, communication, investor relation, everything. do you
True.
also do you also hire? I mean, interview new hires? Are you the one doing that?
So our system is usually we start with the technical co-founders, with scientific side of the team. So we want to make sure, for me at least personally, I see professional skills as binary. So I trust my co-founders, and I say like my part is making sure that this person is a good culture fit, that we didn't miss any red flags in maybe behavior, communication, group dynamics, alignment with the mission, stuff like that. But the first step to even thinking about getting ahead in hiring is making sure that that professional has the required skills. And by the time it gets to me, I ask the co-founders to just say like, is it a 1 or a 0? Because I think, hiring is difficult. Everybody knows, especially the higher the expertise, hiring becomes more and more difficult. And so I think it would be hard to compare different professionals in like their professional capability. Maybe you have experience, which is objective, how much experience do they have, but it still doesn't completely translate to capability for the specific mission task that you want them to perform. So I think that you want to make sure, is this person capable to do this work? And after that, then that where you really, it's more nuanced, and you want to find out, but how motivated is that person to do that? How coachable is that person? Can that person communicate their challenges? Maybe ego could be a problem for a lot of, especially with experience. So stuff like that, I think, are much more detrimental and are likely to cause a hire to go south than professional skill, which is something that also evolves inside the company. Especially if that person is good in all these other things, then they're willing to study, they're willing to ask for advice, they're communicative about their problems. All these could be solved. There is no one expert that is, it's rare that you can get to that one expert which is just the best, it doesn't really exist.
What are your thoughts about diversity and inclusion?
Yeah, great question. Thank you for that. I think that it's very, very important, and that's something unique that gives me a lot of, I guess, like hopeful feeling, that good feeling in my stomach when I when I look at the food tech sector, and I see that it's the most diverse sector. I didn't check the data. I'm just saying that you get to a conference, you see women-led co-founding team, you see women CEOs. I get sometimes to conferences and realize that the median age for CEOs, I'm 32. So like all age groups, all over the world, all types of people, very different ideas. And also I see that not only I usually meet at those conferences, I meet the co-founders. So that's what I'm more exposed to. But the more I'm in this industry, I also meet employees of other companies, and they're the same. And I think that the reasoning behind this is that this industry really draws in people that are interested in making the planet better. And I think it's a combination of being able to think about the future, which is something a little bit unnatural for us as humans. I mean, the further into the future, it's in the future and it's bad. And those are things, I mean, generally like climate crisis could be a daunting thought. And the combination of these, for most people, makes them not want to think about it. So a person who wants to think about the future is not afraid of the challenge and is thinking about us instead of myself, because it's an us problem. That's starting to sound like a personality profile, and I think that's what we're seeing.
Okay, so how many people are there in your team right now, and what's the composition?
Right now we're a team of 5, and we're hiring at least 2 more PhDs. So it's
all males?
Besides me, we are the co-founding team. We are all males, unfortunately, and yeah, we are insisting on the following hires that we hire women. That's something very important to us.
And are you welcoming for people who are into the mission, even if they're from other countries?
Unfortunately, at this time,
Not
we
right now.
just can't, because there are no remote roles, not even hybrid. So we're just working with people who can come to the office every day.
Yeah, in front of the microscope. Okay.
Yeah. Maybe
okay.
some startup could, somehow with robots in the office and someone's controlling them remotely.
Technology,
that.
right? Nothing is impossible. Okay.
Yeah.
So, what's one lesson you would like people to take away from this episode?
Wow. I think there's not one way to get something right. There's so much different variables and depth to doing anything that's meaningful. So, for example, building a company, and that the core thing for me is making sure I'm comfortable with what I'm doing, and I like it, and it's getting me excited. So I think as a maybe less experienced executive, even though I don't have that much experience, I do have some, and I've gained the insight that a lot of times I used to say to myself, I don't like this, but I have to, and I just stopped doing that. And I don't acknowledge being have to do anything no more. And that translates also to being able to be more innovative, because there's no real barrier. We just think that there's something that So I just stopped thinking like that. That's my advice here.
Oh, nice. Yes, mindset matters. So if you think you cannot do it, if you think you don't like it, then I don't know, it will just happen. So, and yes, good luck to you. All the best to Mermade
Thank
Seafood,
you.
and we're gonna look out for more.
Thank you very much.
This podcast is powered by imops.io. Optimize your cloud infrastructure and CI/CD process with imops.io dedicated DevOps team. Check out www.imops.io and get a DevOps team